Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Front Porch Podcast, where we have intimate, intergenerational conversations to connect, build, and learn from each other. I am Candace, representing Generation X, and my lovely co host is Mikhail, who is representing the Millennials. Now, on this episode of the Front Porch, we are headed out to the stoop to talk about social justice. Mikhail, who's joining us today on the front porch.
Candace, on the front porch today is Kenya, Dr. Christy, Dr. Denise, and Tamia. Hello, ladies. Thank you for being on the porch with us. We'd love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself and what generation you're a part of. Let's start with Kenya.
Good evening, everybody. I am glad to be on the front porch sitting on the stoop with everyone this evening. My name is Kenya Eddings, and I am a public health professional, and I am proudly representing Generation X.
Okay, Generation X. Dr. Denise.
Hello, hello, hello. It is great to be on the porch. I just feel myself in my rocking chair, just going back and forth, watching the cars go by, talking about the people across the street, why they so loud out there. Just having a great time with you all. Thank you so much for this opportunity to have this conversation intergenerationally about social justice. I am the owner, founder, creator of Just Talk Consulting, where we really do believe that we can affect change by just talking, but it's got to be a just talk. So it's talking about justice and how we can learn to live and love differently to create a more just and peaceful and equitable and inclusive world. And I am so grateful for this opportunity to join you all in this conversation. Thank you so much.
Awesome. And Dr. Denise, what generation are you a part of?
Generation X.
Another Xer. All right. Dr. Christy.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me. I'm Dr. Christy Carter, founder and principal consultant for Christy Carter Consults right here in the South. We have a social impact firm, and we focus primarily on inclusive ecosystem building in the South. And I've done a lot of work in the Delta, and happy to be on this call with my friends.
Awesome.
And I am Gen X all the way, so I'm among friends.
Y'all are deep. Gen X is deep
We're
on the porch. Y'all
rolling
are deep on the porch. And rounding out the front porch, Tamia. Oh, is Tamia frozen?
I think Tamia might be frozen.
She might be frozen.
Hopefully Tamia will get back. But Tamia was on the first episode of the front porch talking about Generation Who. She is 14. She's a freshman, and she is representing Generation Z. So welcome, everyone. So before we jump into our discussion on social justice, we're going to have like a kind of a warm-up, a little appetizer, some snacks on the front porch. And we call this rapid fire. So
Okay.
I'm going to say a word or a phrase, and you all will say the first thing that comes to mind. No explanation, no changing it, just the first thing that comes to mind. And we'll go in this order: Kenya, then Dr. Denise, and then Dr. Christy. All right, ready?
Ready.
Yes.
Advocacy.
Justice, education.
Speaking up.
Mm.
What I do all day.
Mm. Reparations.
I would say reimbursement, giving back, paying in full.
Mm.
Will not be denied forever.
Mm.
Take them when you can. You might have to get reparations on your own.
Mm.
I thought somebody was going to say, run me my coin right now.
We coming for him now.
Right.
We coming for him now.
Right. All right. Next one. We'll switch the order now. We'll start with Dr. Christy, then Dr. Denise, and then Kenya. What comes to mind when you hear no justice, no peace?
Movements.
Protests.
Mm,
Action.
mm. And finally, liberation.
We want it. We need it.
Mm-hmm.
Full body autonomy.
Mm,
Liberation is I think, being able to exhale finally.
mm,
Mm.
mm.
Love this. This is wonderful.
Yeah.
This
Oh,
is some good rapid fire. This really gets us into the meat of what we're going to talk about today, around social justice, and even your responses to those rapid fire questions, or the rapid fire, the words and the phrases during our rapid fire segment really leads us into the question of how do each of you define social justice that might be the same or different than other generations? We'll start with Dr. Denise. How do you define social justice? Same or different from other generations?
I think that Generation X defines social justice in the same way as the previous generation. I think in terms of social justice being the need for us to move collectively as one body, like it moves us to get what is to take what's ours, right? To demand it, not to ask for it, beg for it, plead for it, but to let everybody know that this is my rights and my rights are being violated. And that is something that I cannot and will not stand by and allow to happen. I think that we, both generations, understand it in that way. I think that Generation X, on some level, because we have experienced more, because we have reaped the benefits of the gains from the previous generation. We've lost sight of that goal because we no longer move as that collective body. Yeah, we know Black people need to come up, but some of us are like, but those Black people, because see, I already got mine. And so that's where the divide comes into our generations. And then when I look forward to Generation is Z, is it Y generation, the next generation,
millennials.
the
Millennials and Gen
millennials,
Z.
when I think about them, it's like they are so far removed. It's like we don't even know why y'all still fighting. What y'all talking about? And so I don't even know if I want to say, yeah, the millennials and those, like, to me, is age. Like we haven't done an effective enough job of telling the story and keeping everything in front of us because we've been hoodwinked into thinking that we've got that we're better off than our ancestors. And so I think that the definition is the same. It's just our response to it and our approach to it that I think is vastly different.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'll just jump in and say that I agree with everything Dr. Donnell said, but then I'll also add that when I reflect upon what my parents' generation went through as it relates to social justice, I think that they had to have a healthy level of activism. Meaning they had to be boots on the ground. They had to be protesting, and it is because of what they did that we are where we are today. I think that along with activism, as it relates to social justice, there has to be a healthy level of advocacy. And what I mean by that is that we have to explain and educate folks on what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it. And I think that for Generation X, like Dr. Donnell said, our parents, they did the groundwork, they laid the foundation for us. And so we have, I think, my generation has not necessarily been complacent, but we have gotten to a level where we are comfortable. But then I think that those who have come after us, the millennials and the Generation Z, the Generation Next, I think that because of the climate that we are in right now, that they are having to revert back to what our parents and grandparents have done with their activism, literally getting out there in the streets, marching, protesting, boycotting, doing sit-ins, because again, the climate dictates that they have to do that. So I think that's the difference, the comparing and the contrast.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Christie, what are your thoughts about this question? Defining social justice.
You're muted, Dr. Christie.
Yeah, my dogs just deboed and came in on me unexpectedly in the middle of this recording, so y'all bear with me. I tell you, the smallest dogs in the world, big dog complex. But when I think about social justice, I think about how, again, it crosses every generation.
Mhm.
And for me personally, being a Gen Xer, I am to some degree looking to the past, right? I'm looking for that one big voice that moves us all together collectively toward the same type of goal. But now I realize that because of them, we're all empowered as generations. And so every generation brings about their own ideas on how we continue to move through this, ever evolving phenomenon, which is social justice, right? So, I lean to all of us to some degree to have our experiences, the way we move about the world, and how we live to bring those different type of new lenses for which to see social justice. So again, and I even come from a lens of inclusivity. So I want to know what all generations are thinking and feeling and doing in their own way towards social justice. And I'll be the first one to say, and in 2020 when we were protesting, I was protesting differently than some of my other generations. But I applauded the ones who were on the ground. But then again, you step up your advocacy and you use your platforms where you can to create those pockets, for social justice to kind of evolve and conversations to be had. So that's pretty much my view on that. It's big, right? It's and it's a lot of work, but definitely we need everybody's voices to be heard.
And can I reflect a little bit about what Dr. Carter just said when
Of course.
she said social justice and advocating in different ways? It made me immediately think about the boycotts and the sit-ins back in the 50s and 60s, and how all of the Black celebrities who could not be on the front lines, but they, sent suitcases of cash to help to fund, to feed, to house, and to clothe those who are protesting. So Dr. Carter's right that we all have a place, and we all are kind of getting in where we can fit in to make a difference. And I just immediately thought of that when she said that, and so I thought I'd bring that up.
Yeah, and I need to bring up something too, because I'm pushing back on my own statement about some of the younger generation not knowing not knowing what the fight and the struggle is about. I do think a level of that is true, but what I do want to also add to the conversation is that when those when the young folks do realize that it's time to show up, they show up, and they show up strong, and they've been for me an inspiration to because I grew up with respectability politics. I don't see that as at work as much with the younger generation. So when we think about the 60s, especially the young folks played a huge role in that movement that we don't talk about enough. And so I was listening to the conversation. I'm like, shame on you, Denise, for acting like the children don't know. Again, I do think that we do need to educate more. I was thinking more about how we don't share the story. So there's so much that our children don't know because trauma keeps us from telling the story. All kinds of things. And so that's what I was stuck in. But I'm so glad to sit here and listen and say, wait a minute, I gotta give props to the young folks, because they are not only showing up strong, but as Dr. Carter said, showing us a different way of protesting, of fighting, of being involved in the struggle, and embodying the struggle, right? So I just felt like I needed to say that.
Powerful growth moment in action. So speaking of young people, Tamia, how do you define social justice, and how do you believe your generation defines social justice?
Personally, when I hear social justice, I just kind of think of the word recycle, because I think, or I see the same habits recycled from the 50s and 60s of protesting to now, like the same as marches or nonviolent acts or even some violent acts. I kind of just see it all passing through generations, like Dr. Carter said. So I feel like we add our own twist to it, like we'll be fighting something different, but using the same motivation from our ancestors.
Mm.
It's
Mhm.
so interesting because there's so many threads that you guys are weaving together about how you think about social justice across generations, which is, part of what we want to be able to do on the front porch. And one thing that was really clear, I think, is the idea that I guess it's really more generation Z, and I've even seen this in some articles and things that I've read. But Generation Z, and then those who might be Boomers or older Gen Xers, like there are a lot of similarities in how they see social justice, how they participate in movements and protests, and then you have Generation X and the Millennials, and we're kind of like, I thought we made it. I thought y'all pushed us through the door. Like, wait a minute,
Right.
Mhm.
we're not as far as we thought we were.
Mhm.
Mhm,
So we're
mhm.
having to, I think, rethink um, our own ideas about social justice and where and how we should be using our platforms and our positions and our sense of power, or how adjacent to power we are.
Mhm.
But I think that's difficult to do, right? Because what I feel like I keep running into is the different iterations of the systems at work against us. When we talk about racism, well, we were fighting it because it looked one way, or we thought
Mhm.
it looked one way. And so we're ready, we get ourselves together, we get the movement, we strategize, we show up, we do all of this work. And then it seems like by the time we do that work, there's a different iteration. So now it looks a different way, and so I feel like we're always playing defense. And so
Mhm.
and because we don't know. So I always say it's a table somewhere. It's people
Mhm.
sitting at this table figuring this stuff out. And we talk about bringing our chair to the table, right? Kick down the door,
Right.
bring your chair to the table. I'm like, I can't find the table. I
Mhm.
would kick down the door.
Yeah.
I would pull up a chair if I knew where it was. And so I feel like I get so tired sometimes because I just feel like I can't see what it is that I'm fighting until I'm already caught up in the mix.
Mm,
Mm.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah, yeah.
That was
Mm.
deep, Dr. Donnell.
Mhm.
Yeah, we do.
Mhm.
It
We feel it.
was.
We run up against the wall and it's like, oh,
Right.
Yeah.
But isn't that how the system is designed, right? I mean, it's
Absolutely.
designed to keep you kind of in the hamster wheel. It's designed to overburden you, overwhelm you, and it can be when you look at it generationally, when you look at the historical signposts, when you can see a
Mhm.
headline today and say, you can pull that from 1950, you can pull that from 1866, right? So to still see those things being perpetuated on a
mm,
daily basis, but I try to ground my hope in tapping
Mhm.
into joy, because joy is an act of resistance. I try to ground my hope in like what's within my control, even on
Mhm.
a local level,
Mhm.
right? How can I
Mhm.
pour into young people? Tamia is my goddaughter, like right here on a local level, and what
Right.
those seeds can harvest.
Mhm.
One thing I will say about social justice for me, just a learning curve, is that like social justice expands into so many areas, right? Social justice
Mhm.
in terms of education, in terms of economic power, in terms of political power, in terms of food security or insecurity, Kenya, like what you're working
Yes.
on, right?
Yes.
And that social justice isn't just limited to race. For
Mm-mm.
so long, I've been, so focused on Black folks, our folks, Black children, forgetting, folks that are hiding in plain sight that may be part of the LGBTQ plus community, that may be immigrants here, that may not speak English, right? And
Right.
some of that plight too. So
Mhm.
But I think that I'm a little different from you because
yeah.
I feel like when I see what's happening with the LGBTQ plus movements, I feel like we can see and recognize some measurable gains recently and even still now in our present, because they just fortified the same-sex marriage act along with
Right.
interracial marriage. When I
Right.
think about the Asian people and our Asian siblings, and I think about the anti hate bill that they were able to secure just recently. When I think about immigrants and I think about how DACA, brown folks won big in the last legislative session,
Right.
more so
Right.
than any of the other groups that you've named. And so when I
Right.
think about all of these different groups where social justice expands into their midst as well, I
Right.
always feel like, but who's being left behind every time? And yet I believe that those gains are made on the backs of Black folks. And when I say Black, I mean Black in the broadest definition, every member of the African diaspora. And so
Right.
now I am, because grew up in respectability politics, I've
Right.
been focused on everybody else without even understanding my own Blackness, with not hearing the stories, without really understanding the struggle. And I have a mama who was in the struggle, but she didn't talk about it. And so now
Right.
I'm like, what? I'm down for Black folks, right?
Right.
And not to the exclusion of other folks. But when you talk
That's
about
cool.
being invisible, I'm like, hey, we're here too.
Right.
We're still
Right.
Black too, right?
Right.
Don't forget
Right.
that. I just think that's interesting, the perspective.
Yeah. No,
But do you,
go ahead, Kenya.
I was just going to say, Dr. Danielle, do you see that the gains that the LGBTQ plus, the DACA students, et cetera, do you see that as a negative towards the Black community? Because I see it, or as a positive, because without our sacrifices, the gains that they've been able to see today, I don't think would not be able to exist or not be able to occur. So is that a glass half full, or is it a glass half empty in your opinion?
Oh, well, please don't misunderstand. I celebrate those wins. I do,
Okay.
absolutely. And I think that again, those wins would not have been made possible without the sacrifices of Black folks. So I don't want to take anything away from them. What I do want to say though, and you can't, because
Right.
especially when you're talking about LGBTQ folks, when people are living at the intersection, right? You're Black and LGBTQ. So whatever gains, you can't separate that.
Right.
So yeah, my concern is not about, it's not a zero-sum game for me. Just because
Okay.
they got something, that means I can't get anything. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
What I'm
Okay.
saying is, when Black folks have been fighting for anti-hate, we were fighting for it in Arkansas just a couple of sessions ago, and we couldn't get it moved. And so
Right.
now we have an anti-hate bill. So it's not that we shouldn't have an anti-hate bill, but where is the anti-Black bill? When we talk about Kanye West or Ye, when we talk about all the statements that he's made that were anti-Black, there was not a huge backlash. When he said something about Jewish folks, he's almost lost his entire livelihood. So I'm talking about the insignificance that I feel as a Black person when it relates to my issues and how the world responds to them, as opposed to how the world responds to other people and their issues.
Gotcha. And you're absolutely right.
Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah.
So along these lines, ladies, would love for you all to share a story of when your eyes were open to injustice directly or indirectly, and the impact that it had on you.
I'll jump in on that one. When I think about that question, immediately I go to, man, let me recall the time when I first knew I was Black, or that something about me and my physical appearance kept me from getting something or going somewhere or being excluded in some way. When it becomes, and hey, thinking about all the different phases of injustice that we go through, I'm sure there's a phase where we're completely blind and we don't even know what's happening to us. I promise you, I went through that phase for years because, I came up with a family that said, we're not focusing on the color of your skin and what that may not be able to, or where that may not be able to take you. We want to focus on excellence and your intelligence and those things. So I wasn't concerned about the color of my skin, right? Necessarily. So there was a moment when I realized, hey, I'm Black, and this is happening to me because I am Black.
Mm.
And this is happening to me because of all of the isms. It's happening because I am thick and juicy. And it's happening to me because, I am an intellect, you know, and it's happening to me because I am a woman, right? There are all those things that make you different that you realize, hey, this is just happening to me because I am different. That was when the light bulb went off. Is when I could not fight, I couldn't fight it. I couldn't win. I knew that, man, this is the problem. And so when you become aware, it's that level of awareness and consciousness that there is a problem. And you've experienced that at the individual level, that now it really means something to you. So the stuff that people were saying to me, I mean, I think about Dr. Maxwell. Candace and I have been friends for 14 years, and she's been talking that, and it's just kind of coming. And I go see Reverend Denise Donnell, and I'm just infatuated, like, whoa, what is she saying? And until it happened to me, it didn't, I was like, now I see. My eyes are open, I'm enlightened. So that's my personal story. It's just, it had to happen to me. And now I'm able to see social or injustices all around me. They're everywhere. It's every ism that you can under the rainbow and everywhere else. It's everywhere.
Child, that could be a title of a book. What did you say? The first time I realized I was Black.
Yeah.
That would be a title of a book.
Right. That is
Well,
a collection of stories. We probably all have that moment in time where you're like, oh, I'm Black.
Reminded or realized. Kenya, you were.
I was just gonna say I'll jump in. I have a couple of stories of indirect stories about injustice. So I work in public health, and a previous job that I had was in the area of wellness, and part of that, part of those job duties included teaching the public and workplaces about breastfeeding laws, particularly as they relate to Arkansas. There are two laws on the books that protects a woman's right to breastfeed in public and at work. And so I was called by a woman once who said that she was going to pick up her children from an elementary school and had a baby who needed to be nursed. The kids weren't ready to come out yet. So she went inside and she was waiting for the kids, and the baby needed to be nursed. The baby was hungry right then and there. And so she commenced the breastfeeding her baby right there in the elementary school, and was quickly told by the principal that no, you can't do that here. You have to go outside or go to the bathroom and do that. And so not only is that against the law, it is a public health injustice. And so it's something that we corrected, of course. But then why should a woman have to be relegated to the bathroom to feed her baby? You wouldn't want to eat your lunch, dinner, or breakfast in the bathroom. So why should a
Absolutely
woman
not.
have to feed the baby in the bathroom? And so just simple things like that. And then there's another instance where it relates to food insecurity. We were teaching some classes at my old job, and afterwards, one of the employees came up to me and had this sad look on her face. And we went over into the corner, and I said, "Is everything okay? What's going on?" Well, long story short, she was at the point in her life where she either was going to pay the light bill or she was going to go grocery shopping for her kids. And this was not that long ago. This was probably about 3 years ago. So it, this is happening to people every day. And
Right.
then finally, I'll just share. We're doing a lot of work in the food desert space these days, and I talked with the mayor the other day, and she was telling me that some of her residents, they don't have a grocery store in their town, no longer have one. So residents have to pay someone $20 for a 15-minute ride to the grocery store just to buy groceries. That's happening today.
Mm.
And the food insecurity as it relates to minorities in the state, well, minorities, nationwide, is twice that of our white friends. And
Mhm.
so this is happening today. Grocery stores are closing every day, and access to food is dwindling for families every day. And so those are the types of social injustices that we face on a daily basis, that we try to fight against every day. So
Mhm.
those are just a couple that just quickly came to mind.
Mhm. Mhm.
Can I jump in?
Yes.
Of course.
Of course.
Um, I just wanted to start by saying I really love what Miss Carter, Dr. Carter, I'm sorry,
Mhm.
Dr. Carter shared. And I would like to add on to it a social injustice that I see and experience very often that I think is common but overlooked
Mm.
is the level or the standard and bar for intelligence to be white.
Mm.
Mm.
Like,
Whole sermon
any,
right there.
Mhm.
it's always you talk proper, or
Mhm.
you're pretty for a brown girl. It's always some sort of comparison that's even like either blunt or just hidden inside of a sentence that I feel like I got it a lot when I was younger, and I didn't know how to take it. I just took it as a compliment. Like, thank you, but thinking of it now, what do you mean I talk proper for a brown girl?
Mhm.
You comparing me to other brown skinned girls and saying that we talk improper because
Mhm.
we're not white, or we can't be doctors because we're not white, or we can't be lawyers because we're not white.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I think that is a very common injustice that a lot
Mhm.
of young Black children have to face.
Mm.
Yep.
What um what wisdom or suggestion, Tamia, would you offer to young people for mitigating microaggressions
Mhm.
and not internalizing that comparison themselves and then thinking of themselves as less than because of who they are?
I would just say, like, you're smart. Period. It's no
Mhm.
for a brown girl or for a
Mhm.
light girl or for a Black girl. You're smart, and that's all it is to it.
Mhm.
Your level of intelligence isn't determined by your skin color.
Ooh, that's
Right.
powerful.
Very good.
Yeah.
We're in good hands, y'all. Come on, Tamia. Come on.
Yeah.
We're in good hands.
That
I'm so
intelligence
encouraged.
thing is that's I as you all were talking about that, I just started to think about the many times and ways in which I've seen people, that I went to high school with, or particularly high school, who were extremely intelligent, but because
Mm.
of the surroundings, they had perpetuated that somehow intelligence, that they didn't want to be equated with being intelligent because of the environment in which they were living. Like
Mhm.
you can't be intelligent and a thug. Like what? Like somehow that just wasn't gonna
You
work.
got to choose one.
Right.
You
Mhm.
have to
Right.
choose, right? I'm
Mhm.
thinking
Well,
that is crazy, but I saw that happen so
Mm.
many times.
so the thing that we know about social injustice is that it's pathological, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
again, I think all of you have alluded to some way of, and we're talking about this intergenerationally. So if we had all of our generations represented, how would that golden thread still be the same? Of course,
Mhm.
because it's pathological and it's rooted in our ancestry and our history.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And so, I always think about, people ask very hard questions of me.
Mhm.
How do you undo this? Or what do you do? You know, um, we have been behind in resources and economic resources for so long.
Yes.
And that's only one problem, right? And so I just don't know where the answer lies. I
Mhm.
really don't know where the that answer lies. But just to say that the pathology somehow, how do we address that even, on our at the ground level, I think
Mhm.
about.
But I think that one of the places that I feel the answer lies is within us. I feel like my job, my duty, my responsibility, in order to hold myself accountable to my ancestors, I feel like I have to embody liberation. Like I have to realize that to survive is a radical act of resistance because of the pathology that you mentioned that is still in play. And I feel like I have to embody resourcefulness. And so I show up as a resource. I show up with resources. I show up as an intellect, and I also disseminate information. Like I show up as all of these weapons against these systems that are at work in all of our lives, in every aspect of our lives. I feel like that's one of the ways I think that we can answer, we can respond to the pathology.
How did you get there, Dr. Denise? Like, how did you get to that place of confidence in self, belief in self, and anchoring in something greater than yourself to walk in the fullness of who you are, regardless of the circumstance and regardless of the audience?
For me, my dad, I have two older brothers, and my dad, this is not the story I wanted to tell, but I just want to answer your question. But so my dad sat us down one time. He sat us down one time and he told us we had a table that was pushed up against the wall in our kitchen. So there were only three, you only could sit around three sides of it. So that we were all sitting down around the sides. And my daddy was standing there. He said, look around this table. He said, look around this table. And so we looked around the table and he said, you all you got. You are all that you have. And in that moment, he solidified my relationship with my brothers, and it bound us together and said, there is no, I don't care what happens, we will stand together. And we have been standing together since then. But as my life continued to progress, my brothers started getting married. They started having children. They're moving away. They're having their own homes. They're having their own swim pool. They got swim pool, chat. I love going to they're living their lives away from me. We're still bound together, but now you are doing your thing over here. And I am an independent woman who I really value being single. I value that. Like I'm resistant to this idea of marriage where there's one person. Like I'm not saying I'll never get married, but right now I'm like, no, I am fine. I am whole and I am more than enough. And so when I realized that my brothers were doing their own thing, I had to look in the mirror and say, you all you got. Now, you are all you got. Now, what are you going to do now? Who are you going to be? How are you going to show up? And so I had to realize I'm navigating this world essentially by myself because I don't have partners. I don't have children. I don't have that. And now my dad is no longer with us. And so it's like, you don't have a choice. And then I realized that that's the mantra that they've been teaching me as a Black woman for years. Like, I've heard that you gotta be, your husband, he might not be in the household, but you gotta be no matter what. And so I have just had to grab hold to those remembrances of what was already being sold into me. And it's just now blooming and blossoming in a way that that I'm unapologetic about. But I wanted to answer the question about, you asked, what was the question? It was a question about your story.
Share a story of injustice, direct or indirect.
Oh, yes. So the same daddy that I'm talking about who really offered my brother and I this gift in this story is the same man who was violent towards me in my home. We complicated. People are complex, right? And so because there was violence in my home and my mother, I did not understand this as a child, but my mother was paralyzed to help as a battered woman, right? So she just did not have the capacity. I saw it as neglect from her on her part, but that's not what it was. And so in order for me to figure out how to live in this house, I needed some help. And I needed help that was bigger than I am because I was living in a home where that was our secret. It was our secret that there was violence in our home. So I wasn't telling anybody, so nobody knew. So I need some help from somebody, but I can't tell you what's going on. Well, who can you talk to that nobody knows you're talking to? Jesus.
Mm,
Ended
mm,
up in church because
mm,
I'm looking for somebody who's gonna understand what's going on, who's gonna be able to help me. I don't nobody has to know that we're talking, we're building our relationship. And so Jesus literally became, say literally, figuratively became my answer. My when we talk about a savior, when we talk about a
ooh,
rescuer, when we talk about the lover of my soul, when we like Jesus was that person for me, and I was leaning and depending and clinging to him with every ounce of my being because I believed that was the only way I was going to survive my home. So
Mhm.
fast forward, I get this job where I'm advocating for people who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, asexual, agender. I hope I'm getting all the letters in. And then let me just add
mhm,
the plus
mhm,
so
Mhm.
nobody will feel excluded. And I started hearing their stories where, because of their sexual orientation, they were being kicked out of the church. And I'm like, you being kicked out of the church? The church, the church is where I run to, right? When I need, like, if I
mhm,
don't have anything else, and the church told you that God don't love you, the church told you you're not. I could not believe anybody would lie on my Jesus. Like, I mean, I got upset, and I said, "Oh
mhm,
no, you done found you an ally today, because we finna fight." And so I began to fight
mhm,
in that space and to be an
mhm,
advocate. And I'm an advocate, an activist. I'm gonna irritate, interrupt, disrupt. I'm all of that. And then once I got into that space, though, I realized, wait, I'm doing all this to help. But what I'm doing all this to help this community, but what is this
mhm,
community doing to help me as a Black person? Right here,
mm, mhm,
disconnect.
mhm,
I'm showing
mhm,
up strong. And then when it's time to talk about, we need to go talk about this police brutality, then y'all not in the space with me.
Mhm.
And so again, I'm asking the question, okay, who's gonna show up for me? It's got to be me. And so I came
mhm,
to this space through the lens of advocacy for the LGBTQ plus community, only to find that I need to also advocate for myself as a Black person.
Mm. Mm.
Other stories of injustices.
Or reactions to
Yeah,
anything
or
you're.
reactions. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's what's up, Dr. Danelle. I mean, that was just so that was just so moving. I'm at a loss for words.
Mhm.
That's
Well,
Well,
moving.
I
yeah,
think
please go ahead.
about, excuse me for interrupting, but going back to um Mikhail's, question and thought around, like, how did you get here? Like, how did you get there, Dr. Donnell? And she told you that it was, very much, and I heard spiritually, right? And I
Mhm.
know for
Mhm,
me, it definitely was a spiritual movement as well. Because I think when you unearth who you are through understanding what, social injustice or inequities really are, you know that it's spiritual, it's a deeper level.
Mhm.
And I heard some things come out of y'all, when you spoke, that reminded me of my research, clinging on to hope,
Mm.
going to your faith,
Mm.
all those things that you have to ground yourself in order to be really who you are every day. And I think about people who are not living and they're dying for who they are.
mm,
And
yeah.
it's like you have to, or they're taking their own lives, right?
Mm.
Mhm,
And
Mm.
so you
Mhm.
have to go back to that whole, how spiritually grounded are you? Because in order to do this work, the work that we do, and the communities that we advocate for, and those mayors in those small rural towns
mhm,
that are grasping for whatever they can, they're already
mhm,
in a place of, I mean, disdain. It's hard. It's like third world countries in some of the places where we live. It shouldn't even be happening.
Mhm.
So, for me, it definitely is a spiritual work. And how did you get there? It was hard. I work on it every day.
Mhm.
I, I'm talking about who you listening to. Look, I'm riding down the road. I want to hear Jay Shetty. I might tune in on Thursday mornings to Reverend Dr. Denise Donnell. and pull, I'm pulling the word, I'm listening to Oprah. I'm going where I have to go. We have some very good spiritual teachers that are out here for us, but definitely fighting and doing what we do, I feel like you have to be spiritually grounded.
Mhm.
And I want to just say something based on what you said, Dr. Carter. I have um, about suicide. Some people are taking their own lives. And I think that it is a sin and a shame for us to treat people the way that we treat them that would lead to that decision. I absolutely
Mhm.
believe that. So to me, that's where I feel like sin is. I don't think if you smoke, that's a sin. I don't think if you drink, that's not where I feel. I feel like we have societal sin that we don't reckon with. And so to drive a person uh, um, to that point, I think is our sin and our shame to carry for sure. And I
Mhm.
want to say that I believe also that suicide is the ultimate act of resistance. I think that a person who says that my life is mine to live the way that I deserve to live it. And if I'm unable to do that, then I want to make sure that I am protecting the dignity that I believe that I have. And I hearken back from that with my ancestors through the Middle Passage and in the Atlantic.
Mm.
There were some who said,
Yeah.
I will, no, my child is not going. I'm not going. We will not. We're going to jump right now. And when I think about their body, their bones being buried in the sea, still whispering
Yeah.
to us about, I wonder would I have been that strong? To me, that's power, that's strength, that's I just wanted to say that because sometimes I feel like when we find out the world, when we find out that a person commits suicide, we shame them, right? We even in their deaths, we shame them. Sometimes people take their lives and we don't even want the world to know. We lie about
Right.
it because we've
Yeah.
put so much stigma on what we call suicide. And so I just felt that as you were talking.
Mhm.
Again, shame on us for treating a person the way that we treat them that gives them
Mhm.
this suicidal ideation. Shame on us. And I feel like I want to celebrate people who say, this is my life and I'm going to make this decision because I believe that it is what is best for me. And I know that's different from people who might be suffering from some kind of illness or something.
But I do just want to say that from a public health perspective, that the ability to at least talk about mental health and social emotional wellness has really come to the forefront in communities of color since COVID.
Mhm.
And we've been dealing with this for generations. But if I don't really see the glass is half full, when it comes to COVID, because we've lost so many people. But it has given us the ability to kind of rip off that band-aid as it relates to mental health and social emotional wellness. So I'm just thankful that we are in a position to at least begin the conversation so that folks can know that they are not the only ones, so that folks can know that they can call for help, so that folks can know that there is help out there for them. Black men, I mean, the numbers are just unbelievable. Not only Black men, but Black boys. And
Mm.
so, just communities of color, period. Just the fact that we are beginning to have those conversations to move the needle forward is just such a positive. It's a blessing, really, a blessing in disguise. So I just wanted to put that out there.
And because we're on that topic, we'll make sure that there is information that we include in the notes and in the information on the podcast for those who might be dealing with some of those issues, because it is something that we do not talk enough about, have
Mhm.
conversations about, even really addressed in some maybe more positive and productive, effective ways to kind of handle and deal with some of those issues. So we'll make sure that we have some information for folks who might need it.
And I think though, Kenya, that you're calling us to
Mhm.
action. Like when I think about what Dr.
Yeah.
Carter said about what is it that we can do, like the answer is hard. And I was thinking while you were talking that one of the answers, if especially for me, the call to action I feel for me,
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
I have to continue to embody being your people, right? Because I think some
Right.
people who are dealing with whatever they're dealing with, they don't know that they have people, right? That's why you end up
Right.
feeling alone and isolated. That may lead you to make a decision to take your life. And so I've got to make sure that I am reminding folks I'm your people, and that we have to create spaces for people to share, create spaces for us to challenge the teachings of our religion, especially as Black folks, where we were taught not to seek help because Jesus is our help. We've got to challenge, we've got to create spaces for those conversations. And so thank you for challenging me, reminding me, like, make sure you are always letting people know as much as possible that you are their people. They got people. People need to know that they're not alone.
Absolutely. So you guys have defined social justice in some different ways, have shared your stories about justice, injustices, how those things have um, how those things have actually kind of influenced or impacted your life. And so I'm wondering if there are some other social, maybe some other cultural experiences that have shaped your focus and your commitment currently. Like what's kind of happening in your space, in your world now that's like really it is absolutely shaping your commitment and your focus on social justice, however you're defining that.
I'll
Well,
jump.
I'll just
Oh, go ahead,
go
Kenya.
ahead, Dr. Carter. No, you go. You go.
Well, I'll just jump in. Thank you for letting me speak. I see it coming from everywhere, in terms of what is influencing um, the different approaches that I'm taking to social justice advocacy work, right? For me, I see it through Black women. My research on Black women entrepreneurship and the different barriers that Black women face in the entrepreneurial ecosystem in the South is pervasive. Racial bias and discrimination is at the top as to the reasons why they feel like they can't make it. Yet, 100% of the women that I researched, 108 Black women, 100% of them all were high hope, right? So they even had the hope, they possessed the hope and the will within to succeed, even when the situation around them seems, bleak, right? So, I look at it through entrepreneurship and health equity, where I work with Dr. Kenya Eddings, soon to be Dr. Eddings, and working with it on with the broadband and equity. So, talking about that mayor in small town, wherever Arkansas or in the South in rural America, talk about how the pandemic impacted them and pushed them even further to the margins when they have no digital literacy. There's no digital equity. They can't even access what they need to survive. Now, you're looking at having broadband as a quality of life indicator. Now what? And then you have those same towns that are they're like, y'all talking about broadband. We need clean water.
Ooh, yes.
We need clean water. So I'm seeing just on the ground through the social work the social impact work that I do, the community and economic development work that I do, I see it in all sectors, in education, and again the health equity, the entrepreneurial equity. It's out there, y'all, and so all of those things and everyone's experiences is what's shaping me and keeping me on this research goal. Because one thing that I find is that we're constantly making assumptions. We're still making assumptions and we're allowing people to tell our story. That's not us. And so that's where I continue to go with the work that I do every day is how can I help tell the stories of those who are constantly still being pushed to the margins.
And I'll just piggyback on Dr. Carter with Black women and health equity. So I mentioned a little bit earlier about the work in breastfeeding that I did at a previous job, and I still do with my new job. Um, Black women do not breastfeed at the level that white women do. We know all of the benefits for both the mom and the baby of breastfeeding. Besides the fact that it's free. You don't have to go and buy formula. You don't have to go and mix powders and warm up the bottle. You can just breastfeed your baby, period. And so we know that for babies who are not breastfed, there are more doctor visits. There's more time off work for mom. And a lot of low income, low access mothers don't have the opportunity to take time off. And so, we have sick babies and we have sick mothers because there's a health impact for mom as well. And so, in addition to that, trying to educate the community, the Black community, about the importance of breastfeeding for not only the baby, but for the mom. If mom is healthy and the baby's healthy, the entire family is healthy, the entire community is healthy. And so taking that message not only to the public, but to churches, faith based communities, and letting churches know how they can help because, most of the congregation is made up of women. And so, if you shun a Black woman who has just had a baby from breastfeeding at church, she's going to go home and she's not going to come back. So, if we can embrace her, we can educate the congregation about the importance of breastfeeding for mom and baby. We can grow congregations because the research is there that we're not going back to church. And COVID has told us, has shown us that we're not going back to church. But faith based having the church is still the hub of where communities of color get information they trust, that they can believe, and they can rely on. So using those as hubs of information is very important. And then I'll just mention one more thing about Black maternity, Black maternal morbidity, mortality, and depression. I mean, it's not just Serena Williams. It's not just Allison Felix. It's XYZ mom, who's not rich and famous and has access. I have I have a sorority sister who lost a baby a couple of months ago, got to the 8th month and lost her baby and is having some challenges right now. I have a coworker whose cousin just passed away a couple of weeks ago after having a newborn. And so we know, and these are young Black women, and it is happening and it has been happening. And so if we can shine a light on Black women, uplift their health, their mental, their physical, their social, their emotional health. There is a campaign that the CDC created called Hear Her campaign. So if check on your moms who are pregnant, check on them emotionally, physically, especially after they have the baby. Check on them. We know that Serena Williams almost lost her life. Judge Glenda Hatchett's daughter-in-law lost her life because she was not listened to. And this is even with the medical professionals. We have to train and retrain, and we have to scream at the top of our lungs if we need to get the help that we need. We all know that, with research, gynecological research, that Black women were used in gynecological research to test the pain threshold, and that the white scientists thought that, Black women had higher pain thresholds. And so that myth has unfortunately been carried on generations and generations. And we have to retrain and relearn. And, we have to be the best advocates for ourselves, we individually and we collectively. And so I just wanted to point out those two elements for consideration as well.
Thank you, Kenya. Thank you so much for saying that.
Mhm.
I don't want to interject too much. I know everyone else needs time to speak, but I just have to say this: advocating for ourselves, and again, here we go, producing. It's like a social justice inequities, and these movements are creating another movement, right? So now we're moving toward that self care,
Mhm.
and going back to revisit taking care of ourselves. And I think it's important because right now Black women are under the spotlight and microscope. The light is
Mhm.
shining all on us. Look at this call right now. And I think about it, but we're also human. And I hate to say it's like I say it's not a bad thing when I say that I believe that black women are under attack. And I look at it from even from a psychological perspective, right? That there, because we are under the spotlight, it's pressure, it's stress, it
Mhm.
causes those different wears and tears on our bodies. So we really aren't performing at our best,
Mhm.
and then we're not creating an environment where our babies can fully thrive and live good, because we're putting all that on them. And
Mhm.
it's happening to us. So going back and thinking about exactly what Kenya said, caring for and advocating for ourselves first, and knowing that we are human.
Mhm.
We can be superhuman and magical and all that good old stuff, but when it comes down to it, we are human and
Mhm.
won't
Mhm.
have to do everything. The
Mhm.
work is out here. It's gonna be here. It's been here forever.
Mhm.
Back,
Right.
we can go back as far as our mind can remember, and this work has been here. So yeah, we definitely need to take care of ourselves. I'm here to try to do better for my own self. So
Mhm.
Mhm.
Some other experiences maybe that have shaped your current commitment to the work that you're doing,
Tamia,
or
did
the
you
work
want to
that you want to
respond?
do. Maybe to me, the work that you are doing or want to do.
Um, sorry. Experience experiences that have shaped kind of how I see myself and how I want to come off to the world and continue to advocate for myself is just how often I see my peers and my friends and just people my age and my color go overlooked by, and what I mean by that is at basketball games. I know some great basketball players, some young male basketball players, and they go overlooked for their talents, and they're still trying hard to get into good high schools and get good scholarships. And I know a lot of young females who will probably do great in this podcast to share their voices and their opinions. And I think it's just really helped me to understand that I need to use my I need to use my voice as my weapon, because it is my strongest weapon. And telling
Mhm.
people my experiences and what I've been through and what I hope to achieve in the future. It's it's just my biggest weapon and the greatest thing I can do. So
Mhm.
continuing to advocate for ourselves, like Kenya and Dr. Carter said.
Mhm.
I
What
love
do
that.
you hope to achieve for your future?
Um, um, I don't have a specific field of work that I want to achieve, but as I continue to get older, I just hope to experience more. I hope I hope to use my voice and the outlets and doors that have opened for me in the greatest way possible, and to finish high school and go into a great college and graduate and be the first graduate of my family
Awesome.
Mm.
so far.
Phenomenal.
Mhm.
Reverend Doctor, what do you have to say about
I
this?
didn't know if there was another follow-up. I was waiting, waiting. I think that what's happening around me now is I'm doing a lot of reading. I'm an avid reader, and I'm a bibliophile. I'm all of that. And I get so angry when I read, because I'm learning something about me that I did not know. I'm learning something about my history that I did not know. I'm learning something about my ancestors that I did not know. And it makes me mad that we are continuing this campaign of um, of not honoring and embracing who Black people are to this world, and that the world
Mhm.
has come into being because of us as Black folks, because of the misuse of our bodies, like Kenya said, gynecologically, medical. I mean, we could just go on and on and on about the misuse of our bodies, even with the institution of slavery. And so when Tamia was talking earlier, and she was mentioning the microaggressions that she experiences as a young Black woman, then I was also thinking a bit, that what she was saying about you are holding me up to this standard. I thought about that white gaze that I've been living my life. I was taught to live my life through the white gaze, and it continues to pervade. And so I get so mad because I believe that white people really do see us for who we are. They really do see our brilliance. They really do understand our power. They really do recognize our divinity. That's why they fight it so much. And so how come we can't see it? And so I'll get mad because I'm like, I want us to see ourselves for who we really are. I want the veil to come, the scales to fall from our eyes. I want the glory to shine all around us, and we can embrace that and embody that. So my continued I'm going to museums, I'm reading, I'm engaging in conversations, I'm having cocktails and conversations, I'm having dinner and dining, dinner and dialogue. I'm just whatever I can do so that I can channel this anger for people refusing to allow us space to just be, because just being is enough for us, right? And it's more than enough for the system. That's why they counter us at every turn. And so this just learning more, reading more, coming into the knowledge of things that have been intentionally hidden from me motivates me to want to know as much as I can know, and to help turn the key for somebody else, just one somebody, just help turn it for one somebody. So I would say anger at being angry is one of the things that motivates me.
Yeah, I always think it's the commitment, to refocus, and maybe even reimagine maybe our focus on our commitment to the work that we're trying to do in our respective spaces, because it can be overwhelming. It can be taxing. I mean, it's all of those things to the point where, I know of a lot of people who are working in the social justice realm, or in DEI world, as I usually refer to it, who are tired and they've given up and they've said, I'm done. Like, I don't want to do it anymore because it's too much. But I think sometimes it is so broad and it is big, but there are some things that maybe we can do that are within our locus of control. And so how do we recommit ourselves to those things, to impacting and influencing people in maybe our local surroundings? I do think that can be a critical and pivotal part of how we actually move the needle. I do absolutely agree. I think it is, for all that we try to do to tamp down our brilliance, we cannot. We're not necessarily magical. I mean, Black girl magic, I get it. I understand it. I'm with it. But there is something that's, I think now that's being said about this whole Black girl magic, social justice, you're magical. Like, we're just running around spreading pixie dust on people and everybody it out. That is not what it is. So, how do we take back ownership of those things, of our brilliance, of our dignity, to say, oh no, absolutely, you will honor who I am and how I am showing up in this space and all of my magnificence. I think that's the magical piece.
And owning that, as Dr. Denise said, believing that in ourselves. Before we move to the next question, as we close out, Kenya, I just wanted to circle back to what you were sharing around just reproductive injustice. And I recently went on like a reproductive inquiry for myself and was looking into egg freezing, and just doing some research, learned that there was some recent research that was published around the neonatal mortality of Black babies born via IVF, and how it is disproportionately adverse compared to white mothers, regardless of social economic status. So even Black women of affluence, education, right, higher educational degrees and attainment, had a higher percentage of their babies dying soon after birth through in vitro fertilization. I think the term is like technology assisted reproduction compared to white mothers. So it's super deep in that area of medical racism and
Mhm.
reproductive injustice and what those options even are. That could be a whole nother episode. What
Yeah,
those
for sure.
options are for women
We
too.
do know that Black babies, the Black community has the highest rate of infant mortality
Mhm.
of any of our white, brown sisters. Black babies die at disproportionately higher rates than our white um, babies and brown babies.
Mhm.
So, there's a lot of work to be done for
Mhm.
sure,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah. And anyone listening to that, sisters, use whatever options and be knowledgeable on whatever choices you want to make in terms of your reproductive journey. That isn't to scare anyone, but be
Right.
knowledgeable, be aware, ask your doctors very real questions, ask them to produce data and statistics, ask them what they track in terms of race and neonatal outcomes.
Yeah, and ask
And
them, do they
also, oh,
know? I'm sorry, go ahead, Kenya.
no, no, you go, you go.
I was when she was saying ask your doctors, like ask your doctor, does the doctor know that your body is 10 years older than you are biologically because of weathering, right? And so when you treat me, I need you to treat me with cultural competence, medical competence. Right? And so
Mhm.
I think that a lot of times maybe what we don't do is we don't how often do we really research the doctors that we're going to have, right? Like
Mhm.
I want to make sure I know who it is that's caring for my body and not just the first person that pops up on the list from when you get your insurance card. Or
Right.
but we have to we need to do our best to find someone who as is more culturally competent and as a provider.
Very, very true.
And I was just gonna say, just one quick addition. Just for our sisters who are in relationships, don't don't block out your partner. Let your partner be an advocate for you. Because there are a lot of times when women who are pregnant or just had a baby, their emotions are kind of all over the place, and so let the partner help advocate for you. Let the partner ask those questions for you, and even with just general medical care. um, a lot of people suffer from white coat syndrome. When they go to the doctor, their blood pressure goes up, the nerves get bad,
Mm.
and so they
Yeah.
don't know what to ask. They don't know
Mhm.
how to respond. Then when they get home, they're like, "Oh, I meant to ask the doctor that." But when you were there, you're just kind of scatterbrained at the moment and you just don't know what to ask. So I always advocate bring someone with you that
Mhm.
can advocate for you, that can ask those questions. Write the questions down and don't leave until the doctor or your healthcare provider has answered those questions.
Mhm.
You're paying for it anyway.
Mm.
Your health
Right.
insurance dollars are paying for it. So
Mhm.
so get those answers that you need. And so I just wanted to throw that out there as well.
But that
Yeah.
makes me think about this being an intergenerational conversation because I think we also should push people to help do that work with our elderly. Like when I think about my
Yes.
mom who just turned 86 on Sunday and I
Yep.
go to the doctor with her, I'm
Mhm.
amazed at what happens in that space that if I were not there, she would have to navigate on her own. And
Mhm.
Exactly.
I know people, we can't send our parents and our
Mm-mm.
aunties and our grandma, we can't send them to the doctors by themselves. And when you said white coat syndrome, I actually thought you were about to talk about what happens to my mom, where she trusts everything the doctor says, so she doesn't ask questions because, well, it's the
Mm,
doctor. The doctor
Mhm.
yeah.
knows, and so if the doctor says
Right.
I need this pill, no, ma'am, that's not how
Mhm.
we
Mhm.
gonna roll. And so.
Right. Right.
I just worry so much sometimes that people are, especially older people, are left alone to navigate that space, and it is extremely difficult to do. They start throwing out these words,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thank you for reminding us that we need to have someone with us when we go to a healthcare provider, regardless of your generation.
And try to do some of the work ourselves, the lifting that we can do ourselves with our diet, with our exercise, with knowing the names of all the medications that we take, with checking our blood pressure, right? Like being educated ourselves on our body, so we are informed as well.
And that's so I know we're not, I know it's about social justice, and I do feel like we are absolutely really focusing right now on the health injustices, but it's huge, because if without our health, where we can't fight the fight in other areas. And so I just think about all of, when even the conversations that we're having with older folks, or the conversations that we're having with young folks, and the terminology that we're using, and how all of the I don't even know if it's code switching, I don't know what it is, but I know that I have to say certain things to older people, and then I have to change my language when I'm talking to somebody in my generation, and then when I'm talking to somebody younger, I have to change my language again, so they know, so that we can connect all these dots. Because to say diabetes, okay, but there's some folks in our community, they still talking about the sugars.
Yes, that is true.
We have to. It's all of this knowledge that has to happen, because if you say the sugars to young folks, they like candy. Well, like, what you talking about? Like, they're not exactly sure. So it's just being knowledgeable in all facets, and having that, as you guys have talked about, that cultural competency, even within our own communities.
That's absolutely true.
But that also made me think about, like I said earlier, I don't think that if you drink, that's a sin. I don't think that if you smoke, that's a sin. And I do not think that those are sins. But I do think that the stress of being Black in America can lead to us wanting to self-medicate in those ways. And so when we talk about injustice and we talk about the health of our bodies, then I do think that we have to be mindful of our intake of these spirits, because they are, I think that it's a direct indicator of what we are experiencing. And I think that it also plays into the system, because if I can keep you dull, if I can keep you high, if I can keep you intoxicated, then you can't fight. Right. So it's a weapon. And then you look at our neighborhoods, what do you see more of?
Liquor store everywhere, fast food everywhere.
And so I think that has to be part of the conversation. So if you're going to be a resistor, then let's talk about what you're putting in your body. And again, everything in moderation. So again, I'm just saying, let's think about this, think about the role that it plays, and think about how it keeps us from being as effective as we possibly can as warriors.
Yes.
Love it.
So if you were to have a conversation with the civil rights or social justice leader from the past, who would it be, and what's one question you would ask him or her?
Can I go?
Of course.
I would love to speak. This is going to be a common answer, but I would love to speak to Martin Luther King Jr. Because one unique thing that I love he did during his protests was stay peaceful. And now the protests that I'm seeing now, they're protesting, but it's not as peaceful as he did it. Because when some tear gas gets thrown, or any gas bombs or whatever, like, we're starting to fight back now physically. And I would just love to ask him, how did he stay calm, and how did he stay peaceful despite everything being thrown at him? Because being emotionally mature and emotionally stable to handle those circumstances is something that I would really want to learn, and I feel like he would be the best teacher for that.
All right.
That's a good question.
That's so wise to me. So wise.
What about other folks? Who do you all want to talk to? What are you going to ask them?
I have several on my list. The list is just endless, but I'll just throw out the first one that comes to mind. It would be the unbossed and unbothered Shirley Chisholm.
Yes.
And that's still your answer,
No. I'm glad I had more than one.
Okay. Yeah, I would just love to ask her, how did the fortitude that she had, because she exuded it. Where did it come from? How did she sustain it? How did she maintain it? And then I'd ask her, in her infinite wisdom, if she had her crystal ball and knew what was to come, being the days that we're living in right now, what advice she would have for how we could manage to survive and thrive.
Mm.
Mm, mm.
Doesn't look like Christy's about to come off mute right now, so I guess that's my turn. I would want to talk to Fannie Lou Hamer
Mm.
from
Yeah.
Mississippi. She did the work in Mississippi. I just went to the Legacy Museum in Montgomery, Alabama, and bought her book "Until I'm Free," and that motto, "Nobody's free unless we all free." If you ain't free, if it's one person not free, none of us are free. When we say that, I say that all the time in the work that I do. Fannie Lou Hamer she has darker skin, she has a thicker body, so that's me. Darker skin, thicker body, big mouth, and big mouth meaning that I'm not afraid to use my, like Tamia said, I understand that my voice is my biggest weapon. And Fannie Lou Hamer was willing to speak up at all costs, like she was unapologetic. And so she just embodies for me all of what I think about when I say to be a force in the movement. And I'm struggling with what I would ask her though, because what I want to know is, I think I want to know from Fannie Lou Hamer how she continued, or how she found peace in her soul with all of the competing thoughts about who she is. Because you have some people, when you show up as unapologetic in the face, they like, yes, for your being unapologetic. But you can be that same person, you show up in another space and it's like, oh, here you go, you finna be sister soldier up in here. And then you have other people who call on you because they want you to have that voice. But then when you raise the voice, then they back down. Like, I came to speak up for you, and now you've left me high. And I just believe she was dealing with all of that just for being who she is. And I feel that. And so I wondered I would just wonder if she could give me some counsel that would help me just find, because I know my place and I'm gonna walk in it, but it's just so much noise sometimes around who you are that sometimes I think distracts from the work that you're trying to do. And so I would just want to talk. I'd love to have a conversation with her.
Dr. Denise, you speak so poetically. Every time you speak, it sounds like music. It's harmonious. It's poetic. Thank you for being you.
That. I appreciate that.
Thank you for being you.
I really, I thought about the question, but I keep coming back to right now. And I keep coming back to the folks who are leading right now, folks that I watch from a distance, and I just want to just pull up a chair and talk to them on the front porch. Like, and that person is Lisa Hicks Gilbert.
Yes.
Lisa Hicks Gilbert is the new mayor of Elaine, Arkansas. And if you look up in your history, you'll find out about Elaine, Arkansas.
That's a big
and
deal.
What it comes from to me, and you could Google Elaine, Arkansas. You know about the Elaine massacre? Have you heard about that?
No.
Look that up. So Lisa Hicks Gilbert is a descendant of those Elaine, those who were killed in the Elaine massacre. All of, we talk about social justice. And she left and she came home. And I really want to talk to her. And, I watched her fight too. I'm not going to say that, I wasn't there when she fought. I can remember when a flame was lit under her and how she was so strong. And she said, no, they're going to hear from me.
Yes.
So, and she stood firm on that. And I watched her fight. And I believe, I don't know, and if anyone else has the stats, correct me, but I believe that she won mayor like by 3 votes. And
it was a runoff.
Yeah, it was a runoff. It lasted for a very long time, and it was just so hung up. But I'm thinking about how hard she had to fight for something she believes in, and those are the folks I want to talk to. And
Mhm.
if she gets to see this, I hope that we can sit down and have that conversation someday.
Mm.
Because
We'll make sure the link finds its way into her inbox some sort of way.
And then also, you said that you were going to include some resources. I think we were talking about mental health resources.
Mhm.
Maybe there could be a
Mhm.
link for people to learn more about
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Elaine,
Absolutely. We can definitely do that.
the massacre.
Mm-hmm.
And see,
Mikhail,
this
did
is
you
the
have
kind of stuff
something?
that makes me mad right here because I'm just thinking how when we talk about the history, they'll call it a riot, right?
Mhm.
And it wasn't a
Mhm.
riot; it was a massacre. Like let's
Mhm.
tell
Right.
the truth, the whole truth. That's the kind of stuff. And so then I'll be on this quest to make sure everybody knows it was a massacre.
Mhm.
Is there someone you would want to talk with, Mikhail?
Yes, I would love to sit with Claudette Colvin,
Yeah.
still
Okay.
alive, who is 83 years old. Many folks do not know the incredible story of Miss Colvin. I didn't. It
Mhm.
was just 4 years ago when I learned about Miss Colvin, who was 15 when she refused to give up her seat on a Montgomery, Alabama bus to a white man 9 months before Mrs.
Mhm.
Rosa Parks gave up her seat. And Claudette was arrested, taken to jail, charged with disturbing the peace, assault and battery on a police officer, and another charge related to like violating the segregation laws of that time. And Claudette was pivotal to the civil rights movement. She was part of, she was a plaintiff on the case, the Browder versus Gale case that successfully overturned bus segregation. But she was also hidden from history for a lot of
Mhm.
different reasons. For her age, she was a darker skinned woman. She was pregnant at 17. There was a lot of colorism involved.
Mhm.
No disrespect to Miss Rosa Parks, but she was the better look to be the
Right.
face for many different reasons. So I would ask Miss Colvin to just share some defining stories from her history, and just glean from her and just learn and listen and be in awe and show reverence to Miss Colvin.
Yeah.
Thank you for lifting her up, Mikhail. And
Yeah.
I didn't know if we were gonna go there. I didn't feel like this was gonna be a space where we could go there, but I would love it, Dr. Maxwell, if you and Mikhail would consider us having us. I'm saying y'all consider, doesn't have to include me. Conversation around some of the rifts in our unity as Black folks. So when you mention colorism, when you
Mhm.
mention
Yeah.
the way that we shame people who are pregnant before they are married, and again, not talking about the whole institution of marriage that now we are so excited about that we were denied for so many, so those, I feel like that's a whole porch
Mm.
Oh
conversation.
yeah. Oh
That's
yeah.
a series.
So,
Mhm.
When
Yeah.
you start to dig down and unpack and uncover some of those things within our community, this is where that whole Booker T versus
Mhm.
Dubois.
WB
yeah,
Duarte. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's the
Douglas.
same kind of
Hmm.
like, well, no,
Hmm.
we can't talk about that. Why not?
Mhm.
Yes, we can because it's
Let's
still.
talk about Malcolm versus Martin.
Let's talk
Right.
about it. Let's talk about it.
Yes.
We need
Like
to
I,
uncover some of that history and understand who
Mhm.
we are as a result of it.
Mhm.
Right,
Yes,
absolutely.
yes, that is definitely something that we can bring to the front porch for sure.
Yes.
So ladies, we are, well over the time that we had asked for you all to sit on the front porch with us, but we do want to give you all an opportunity for um, just to share some words of wisdom with the audience. What would you want to pass along to the next generation? Or what appreciation or gratitude would you say to the generation before you? Words of wisdom to the next generation, appreciation, gratitude, those who have come before us.
Yeah, I'll just say it. Having gratitude for, our bodies, the way they look, the way they feel, the shape they are, our skin, everything that is our appearance, and everything that makes us who we are.
Mhm. Mhm.
Don't be ashamed. Don't apologize.
Snaps to that.
I
One of
am.
my,
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, one of my favorite quotes um, is how wonderful it is that no one waits to start to change the world. And so, with that, I would just say to the young people that you do not have to wait until you're an adult to affect change in your community. You don't have to wait until you finish college. You don't have to wait until you have a good job with benefits. You don't have to wait until you have a house and 2.5 kids and a nest egg to make change. You can start today. And that change does not have to be, you out marching and picketing and doing sit-ins. It could be something small. Um, what you are capable of doing, not
Mhm.
what someone else wants you to do, but what you are capable of doing to affect change. And then finally, another quote that I like is, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And we are all in this together. We have to stick together. We've done so since the beginning of time. And I don't think that we should let the isms of society break us up and tear us apart. So we have to stick together because we have so much more to do and we can do so much more when we are together. So we have to stick together.
Tamia, would you like to go?
Yes, but I'll go after you.
She said, what?
Yes, but I'll go after you. You were waiting.
Oh, okay. No worries. Thank you. Um, I would I would like to express my eternal, because I know forever and ever and always I will feel this way. My gratitude for every member, for every member of the African that was a part of the Atlantic slave trade, right?
Mm.
So every person who was kidnapped, every family who was separated, every child that was lost, every body that was dehumanized, every woman that was raped, like every person who um, was caught up in this system that is evil, right? Continues to be evil. I carry that struggle in my cells. And I know that the way that I move comes from the way that they moved. Their constant movement of picking cotton and all of the things that they had to do, all of that lives within me. And I feel like it makes me who I am. And so I feel like without them, I could not be. And I cannot express I cannot even I don't have the words to articulate how grateful I am for their strength, for their courage, for their determination, for their faith, for their conviction, for their love, for their joy, for their I'm so thankful. And that is what I want. Yeah, that's what I'd like to say.
Let me get this offering played out.
You
I know, right?
Tamia, close us out. What do you have to say?
I just want to finish it with, I would tell the younger generation to be natural and to be yourself, your true self, as hard as that may be. Um, I I just wanted to tell them that you don't need a filter to fit in, because inside and out, who you are is who you were created to be.
Wow. Who you are is who you were created to
Come
be.
on now.
Come on, somebody.
Be that.
Said that.
Come.
She said that. And on that note, ladies, thank you all so much for coming and sharing the space and time and energy with us on the front porch. We are absolutely grateful for your presence. Thank you very much. We will make sure that we have links to all of the information that we talked about today, so that we are passing along that information, that resources, to create a level of awareness for all of our audience members. Thank you so much. We will see you next time on the Front Porch Podcast.
Bye bye.